Hello, my name is Lucía Bennett Ortega and I'm a predoctoral researcher at the University of Granada. I conduct my research in the field of English literature and I specifically focus on the theoretical frameworks of critical posthumanism and disability studies, under the supervision of Dr. Fernández Santiago. In previous videos, Dr. Fernández has introduced the notion of vulnerability, discussing its portrayal in both negative and positive contexts. Today, I aim to provide a textual example of the representation of vulnerability in a contemporary TV series, offering a perspective that presents vulnerability in a negative light. As a brief recap, vulnerability is broadly defined as a situation of risk that endangers the integrity and the well-being of individuals. Examples of vulnerability are issues related to gender, to race, to precarity, and to disability. Typically, vulnerability is represented as something negative that must be solved or overcome. In the next few minutes, I will focus on vulnerability and its representation in the episode of San Junipero from the TV series Black Mirror, by building on the notions that Dr. Fernández introduced in her previous videos. The story is set in a simulated reality called San Junipero, where people can upload their consciousness, particularly the elderly or those who are terminally ill. In this digital afterlife, individuals can experience different decades and eras, and they have the option to pass on permanently or pass over, as they call it. The narrative primarily follows the relationship between two women, Yorkie and Kelly, who meet in San Junipero. The episode explores themes of love, the impact of technology on human existence, and the idea of life after death in a virtual world. In this episode of Black Mirror, vulnerability is represented in terms of illness, old age, and death, and is centered on two elderly women in the US. Yorkie is revealed to be paralyzed from the neck down due to a car accident that occurred when she was very young. Kelly initially visits San Junipero intermittently, and later reveals a personal tragedy involving the loss of her husband and child in a car accident. Vulnerability in this episode is thus used as a plot device, the center of the narrative, and the reason for the women to escape to this simulated reality. So in San Junipero, the story brings two characters together, Yorkie and Kelly, despite their respective illnesses and old age. And in this virtual world, they can appear and feel as they desire, without the limitations of their physical bodies or the constraints of the real world. Vulnerability is thus portrayed as something negative in this episode, and virtual reality serves as a form of escapism where individuals can transcend their vulnerabilities and imperfections of their human lives. While it is true that vulnerability is largely regarded in a negative light in this episode, it's important to note that the narrative also raises ethical questions about the consequences of seeking invulnerability and avoiding the complexities of real-life vulnerabilities. As I conclude this exploration of vulnerability in San Junipero, we found ourselves at the intersection of vulnerability, humanity, technological advances, and nature. The characters struggle with the decision of whether to stay in the simulated paradise or face the uncertainties of the afterlife, prompting reflection on the nature of existence, human connection, and the impact of technology on the human experience.